Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm your host, Tricia Carr. Thank you for being here with me today. I'm super excited, pumped about this episode because it's one of my most favorite topics. I guess all of the topics on my show are my most favorite. But before I bring on my amazing guest, I just want to remind you guys that I do have my twice monthly intuitive mediumship development class, and we have shifted things around a little bit. You'll find that there are topics that I teach on each week. And if you want to practice your gifts, you may. And if you want to just lurk and just receive, you may do that as well. So this coming one is on a Tuesday evening. If you're listening, somewhere in the vicinity of the live broadcast of this episode, and we will be talking about raising your vibration because, oh my gosh, y'all, that's how we do everything is from the core, from that fertile landscape of the vibration. So that's what we'll be talking about. Go check it out on my website. If you go to work with me, you'll find the Mystic Arts Academy, and you can see what the upcoming topic will be and how you can join either online or in person at my studio in Burbank, California. And without further delay, I'm so excited today to welcome Felicia Bender, PhD, the Practical Numerologist, who is the author of Redesign Your Life Using Numerology to Create the Wildly Optimal You and Master Numbers 11, 22, and 33, The Ultimate Guide. Felicia is passionate about writing, counseling, teaching, and presenting ways to use numerology, spirituality, and intuition to understand ourselves and others on a deep level, to validate our life purpose, and to develop tools to understand how to trust our own intuitive language. I love this woman. I love all of her work. Welcome to the show, Felicia Bender. Can we hear her?
Thank you. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Good.
Excellent.
That was my five pushing it a little bit. There was a moment.
And we're also in Mercury in retrograde, not to go directly into all that. So, for all you listeners out there, if there's some glitches, just laugh or
bear with us.
Be kind or something. Yes, bear with us.
Well, seriously, your work is just so amazing. So I love how empowering your work is around numerology because, of course, as I'm sure you know, you could go look things up and they're like, well, if you're a life path 4, you just suck forever. It's boring, it's dry, it's dirt, and it's not interesting. Or if you're a 33-6, then you must be Jesus Christ, or that's the end of things. There's fear-based in a lot of it, but I just love how empowered and also just you have a new perspective. It's slightly new perspective from any other way that I've read or, researched numerology. So thank you so much for all of that.
Well, thank you. I hope that's the point of all this, right? Is right. To offer it. I think that, what you do, obviously, Tricia, is the same. It's like, how can we, this is only for validation. It's only for empowerment. And of course, we're always, people that I'm working with and engage with always do want to know kind of the challenges, the downsides. Sometimes people want to know that even more than they want to know the optimal because they're like, hey, I'm really struggling here. What's the deal? So right. We all want tools to allow us to do this. And what I love about the numbers is that they're non-critical. Basically, it's just, hey, here we all have issues. Here's the deal. So how are you going to work with it? So that's what I love about it.
And I feel like it's good to note right at the top that there are no good, wonderful, perfect numbers, and there are no bad, awful, terrible numbers. And you shared with me your life path 3, which is a beautiful, dynamic, amazing, creative, communicative number. And it holds its challenges and it holds its highlights. And, Donald Trump is a 4, which is supposed to be the builder, right? It's supposed to be so organized, the teacher. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, wow. And if you look at his full chart, every number in his chart is a karmic debt number.
It is? Oh, I feel sorry for him now. See?
Well, there's a certain level of, we can't really feel sorry for anyone. What we can do is step back and go, how are we working with that and to understand the challenging elements to it, right? And
so talk about the karmic numbers, because that's not necessarily as widely known. Obviously, not everyone, but most people know there's the life path, and that's kind of like, your core high. I guess let's start with life path. So the life path number is the one that is the most core to you, almost like the sun sign in astrology. Is that that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I would correlate it with the sun sign. And it basically, if you're going to know one number, that's going to be the one. And it comes from your birth date. So it never changes. Like some of the other numbers in our charts are from our name. So those can vacillate. But the life path number really is, I find it's your life's purpose. It's what you checked in to do. And yet it's a subject matter that you haven't covered before. So you get, you have these innate gifts and talents in these arenas, and yet you also have some more substantial roadblocks to getting there. And I'll give you just a little example. As you talked about, I'm a 3, and that's all about creativity, communication, and all of that. And it's the number of joy, kind of optimism. And yet many 3s have a lot of emotional trauma.
Yeah.
They struggle with depression. They can go that those are the struggling points. And they also struggle with communication. I know a lot of 3s actually, the young man, for instance, in the Stranger Things, the boy with the lisp.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
He's a singer. He's been on Broadway, and he's an actor and a performer. And he has this lisp, and he's a 3 life path. So it's like I have a lot of 3s who stutter, who have other roadblocks there that other people wouldn't have. So it's a really great to look at that, because it's like, yeah, this is what I'm all about. And yet I will have a few more, challenges in the road in terms of getting there.
And what's so cool about, what is that actor's name, Kurt? Kurt, is he and Kurt's a 3 as well. Kurt is producer Kurt. So we're talking about you guys right up front.
Gaten Matarazzo.
Okay, that's why we don't remember his name. It's it's a challenging one. It's hard to say.
Let's call him Dustin from Stranger Things.
Dustin.
So that's who he is. And again, a lot of 3s engage with that. And 3s have this emotional, like Nina Simone is a 3. These people who have these deep reservoirs of emotion, and yet sometimes it comes out, in different ways. Let's put it that way.
Well, what's so cool about Dustin? Oh, I'm sorry. What's so cool about Dustin is that he's such a young person who's actually really overcoming those powerful challenges, and it's like undeniable that he has this communication, this creativity. I mean, he's just so charismatic, in spite of the fact, or despite of the fact, that he has these other kinds of challenges going on with his biologically set up in his mouth and stuff.
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing. Again, looking at this as a tool, because you go, well, that's not fair that I have a lisp or this or that. And yet he's this, it makes him individual. It makes him unique. Yes. He is so quirky and he's so buoyant. I mean, don't you just ride along with that kid? He's just so fun, and strangely confident,
Yes. For a kid, let alone the other challenges he has. Right.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful tool to see it that way. And yet I think I got a little derailed when we started out talking about the karmic numbers there, and just the brief thing there, because it is something that's a little more of a deep dive with numerology, as you know. And yet in numerology, there are karmic debt numbers and then karmic lesson numbers. They're two entirely different things. Okay. And so we won't talk about the lessons at this moment, but we will talk about, for just a second, the karmic debt numbers. And those are indicated in your primary chart that you would have in your numerology chart. And those are indicated by the numbers 13/4. Because, and just for those of you who don't know about numerology, we're always reducing down to adding and reducing, well, mostly anyway, to a 1-digit number. So if you have a 13, you would add the 1 and the 3 together and you would get 4. So that's why I say 13/4. So it's not totally confusing, but 13/4, 14/5, 16/7, and 19/1 are all considered karmic debt numbers. And that basically indicates that those who have those numbers are paying back a karmic debt from a past manifestation, from a past incarnation. And yet what I like to say, number one, is that it doesn't mean you're bad. Right. It doesn't mean you're being punished. It simply means it's like the credit card. You charge this up on your credit card, good, bad, and different. You got to pay it back, right? So there's no value judgment there. It's just going to indicate to you if it resonates. It's such an amazingly powerful tool to go, ooh, this is why I keep having these issues over and over again.
Yeah.
And, and then we get to, often when we're seekers and we get to a certain point of maturity, let's say, we can go, ooh, used to, been there, done that, but don't do that anymore. And so you can kind of pat yourself on the back and go, hey, I've been doing a pretty good job paying back my debt, right?
Right.
So so that's what the karmic debt numbers indicate. And I'll give you an example. So for instance, the 13-4 that he who shall not be named has. So,
that's what he has too? Okay. Yeah.
well,
oh, you said it basically his whole chart,
that is,
right. Mm-hmm.
That is his life path number.
Yeah.
And so in any event, that the 1 in 13 indicates selfishness in a past life, and that is the common denominator to all of the karmic numbers. And then we look at the number next to it, and in what category was the infraction? It was in the 3. So it basically means that in a past life, this person was fairly lazy, irresponsible, didn't take personal responsibility for themselves, passed it off to others. And the other tributary or category there is that they also were abusive of communication. And of positivity. And so they really used words for hurtful reasons.
Right.
They used them as sarcasm, to tear people down, to be uninformed, those sorts of things. And so when we have this, it's telling us that those are going to be sticking points for us. And those are going to be things that we really need to pay attention to, while we are also becoming the highest and best of the 4, which is that teacher, that knowledge purveyor, that solid, steady, hard worker, the worker bee. So that's the 4. So it just complicates it and enriches it at the same time. But when you can really succeed in being that 4, the effects are really phenomenal. Really phenomenal.
Think about it. I mean, just to talk about Trump in a completely neutral way. I'm being in observance of whether you're a huge supporter or a huge detractor of his. Think about how that set up. So then his life, he was actually born into some privilege, and that can actually be difficult, because then you have to really, especially if you're supposed to be manifesting as a 4, which is the teacher and the builder, but then you have these other things around you that kind of like, you don't really need to do that stuff, right? It's set up for you. So that's actually a challenge. And then where he is now in a job, the president, you have to fall into structure, even if they're whoever the president is, if they're constantly like kicking against it, there's no option but to fall into some structure and to fall into a role of teaching, and whatever you do with that is what it is. It's pretty powerful stuff. Like, he's working out the karma, that's for sure.
Yeah, I find that people with karmic numbers often, those who we aren't talking to or for, usually are kind of following what I would say, to use the metaphor, the same rut in the road, right? They're doing the same thing that they were doing last time, and they're still challenged with that. And yet those who are seeking and who are feeling the need to really step up are working it. They're working it out.
So I have a karmic number for my life path. I am a 14-5. Well, actually, let's talk about, just real briefly, in case folks are saying, wait, how do I find that out? Yes. You teach, or you favor the way to discern like your life path number is to reduce each the day, the month, and the year first, and then add them together? Is that
correct?
Okay.
Correct. They, like all ologies, like most everything in life, there are different schools of thought around it. I do feel like it is the most proper way to do it is the day, month, year. You can also do it like a long math problem, like Dan Millman does that in his work, which I highly love and respect. And Hans Dekos is a numerologist who says that the best way is the other way. So I always say, hey, go check it out.
Yeah, do both.
Try what feels best to you. And yet, should we just use an example for this? So let's use August 14th, 1963 as just an example, pulling out of the hat. And so we would look at August. August is an 8, right? It's the 8th month. So we would write down 8. Then 14 is 1 plus 4, and that equals 5. So we write down 5. Now we take 1963 and we'll add that together. So 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 3. So 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 6 is 16, plus 3, 17, 18, 19. So this is where you get to add again. We're always reducing down. So you take the 19 and you take 1 plus 9, and that equals 10. And then this is where it can get confusing. It's like, okay, well, I got a 10. That's not, we're always working with the numbers 1 through 9 primarily. Mm-hmm. And so you keep adding. 1 plus 0 equals 1. And so that's a 1. Then you go and add this together as a math problem. So 8 plus 5 plus 1. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So in this case, this is also a 14, a karmic 14, 5.
Like me.
Like you.
Yeah.
So, and yet that's how you get that number.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's how, with that, I didn't know that until I'd come across those. And then in a long number, in just a long math problem, I do not come out as a 14-5, but in the way that you just described it with the, separating the day, month, year, reducing those and then bringing them together. That's how I come up with the 14-5.
Yeah, exactly. And like everything like this, we really start getting into what our school of thought that we adhere to and why and what that gives to us. Because basically if you're in numerology 101, all you want to know is you're a 5, because that's enough to start with, right? Mm-hmm. And then if we want to dig down and dig a little deeper, then you decide if you're doing it that first way that we've talked about, where it's a 14-5, and yet what are the two numbers? Let's see, if I do 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 31, 32. So in our example, if we do it the long way, we get 32 before we digit it down. Mm-hmm. So, and that makes a difference.
And I think, does Dan Millman, Millman, does he look at it that way, like a 32-5 or a 23-5? Right.
He would see it as a 32, and then you get to see how you are a mixture of the 3 and the 2.
Yes.
As what, and to see what propensities you have that. So it just, again, it enriches the reading around it, and you can just get a little more specific about that, because, mm-hmm. A lot of people, you can be an 8 life path, and you can be a 17, you could be a 44, and it just brings a different way in which you present that.
Like a different nuance, different kinds of hues, a slightly different path to get to the same destination. And
Correct.
maybe the karmic one is a slightly more dangerous path is a way to look at it, or exciting, or, rife with learning opportunities. That's how I like to see it.
Indeed, those learning opportunities mm-hmm. that we all love, ha ha ha, and and yet, yes, it is true. And again, one of the things that I love about it is a tool for empowerment, because if you look at this and look at it not as you've been this bad boy or girl and you're being punished or put in the corner, you can go, oh wow, this is why this is a continuing issue for me. This mm-hmm. is why I feel this way. This is why I've had these experiences. Right? I mean, a lot of times people, for instance, with a 19-1 karmic number, that's an abuse of power. And they have people in their lives who abuse power toward them.
Mm. And it gives you the opportunity to look at it with objectivity rather than emotional, reactivity or victimhood. It's like, oh, okay, clarity. I see it. Great. Now I know how to work with this.
Exactly. And to kind of lighten up a minute and go, yes. Oh, this is why this is happening to me. And I'm learning this. And even though I can't remember my past life, unless you're doing regressions and all of that, maybe you do. And yet you can kind of go, oh, wow. Okay. I brought this on myself, mm-hmm. whether I know it or not, or remember it or not. And again, now I'm just having to kind of pay the piper, right? Just pay it forward in that way.
Well, let's talk about some of those master numbers then, because you have your amazing book that I've read both of your books, by the way, but your master number book, which is really, really powerful. And most people probably have master numbers somewhere in their chart. And for me personally, as I changed my name about 6 years ago, my full name is now 11-2-11-2-22-4. That's what my numbers come out to be.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you're still standing. That's amazing.
It's crazy, right? However, the other thing I'll share with you is my pinnacles or my cycles are 11-2-11-2-22-4, and then 6. I'll go into 6 in about 5 years, I think. So I'm in 22-4 right now. So even if I look at my birth name, I still have a lot of 11, a lot of master numbers going on with my business, and I'm married to an 11-2. My best friend and business partner is an 11-2. My assistant, who's also a really dear friend, is an 11-2. I'm like, oh, goodness. I might as well be 11-2 myself.
I know, isn't it? Oh, it's so fascinating to me. This is what I just get the biggest kick out of, though, is when you start learning the numbers and everything, you can start seeing who you have a propensity toward,
yes,
and who you attract and who attracts you. And you kind of, I love doing family dynamics as well, because it's like we all are these little dolphin pods, right? That come in together to trigger each other, and I can read families and go, oh, and this and this and this, and this one is just the black sheep, and they're like, how did you know? Because and it's not that it's bad, it's just totally different from everybody else, so it's a great tool for understanding other people as well.
My family teases that I am the white sheep in the family of black sheep, which I don't know which is better. But I mean, that makes a little bit of a sense as a 5, right? As a 5 life path.
That's really funny because it's you can be the one who has more of a propensity toward again, the spiritual path, however you might want to define that, and the others in your family haven't hopped on that bandwagon, and so you are the white sheep in black sheep's clothing.
Exactly. Well, my original, my birth name, my soul urge is 7, and my personality is 3. My destiny is 1. It's just a mess. It's like, I guess you can kind of see that. But with the soul urge being a 7, that's that spiritual seeker number.
Exactly. And it's beautiful, though, because if you look at it all together, the validation around that is that here you are. I mean, I would love to know if you've always felt this call toward a spiritual helping, healing life.
Oh, yeah.
Or
I started the Bible club when I was in high school. I mean, it's ridiculous. I had like a spiritual awakening when I was 11. Yes, I've always felt that.
And think about that. You had the spiritual awakening when you were 11 years
right.
old.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, and yet how beautiful for you, because you picked up the ball early. A lot of some people kind of bounce around and do a little crashing and burning before they get that wake up call,
right.
that brings them into that. So bully for you again.
Yes, but of course then we go in and out of awakening, I think, or at least like we kind of plateau, and then then we feel like we had a brand new awakening. I think that happens throughout the life, doesn't it?
I think so, very, very much. And if we're not, if that doesn't happen, we're not really, in it.
We're not doing it.
Yeah, we're not doing it. And that's another great reminder, Tricia, is that we're, as soon as we get into this kind of linear, ooh, this feels comfy, cozy, usually there's something that's going to, do a quick, quick hairpin turn, or the bottom's going to drop out of something, or just to really bring us into that whole flow and that trust and being able to let go. I mean, isn't life just a series of surrenders, basically, in many ways.
So the master numbers, and so if you have a life path master number, and of course you get, as a master number, you get 2 numbers really. So you vibrate the diminished one, the 2, as much as the 11. Is that how, or is the 2 the foundation to be able to shine the 11? How do you describe it and tell everyone how you do that?
Well, the way I like to describe this is that, first of all, the master numbers again are those double digits, 11, 22, 33. Those are the ones that we primarily look at in a person's numerology chart. Mm-hmm. They can show up as cycles of time. They can show up as in different elements there. But let's, kind of focus for a moment, just if it shows up as your life path or as your birthday number, that sort of thing. So basically those double digits, give you the idea. Well, they're telling you that you checked in with higher spiritual potential, no matter how you might personally define that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also some more intense challenges. The bottom line really is, it is not easy. It is a marathon, like I like to say, not a sprint, because you are really here to master your life on every realm, and no pressure, right?
Right.
No pressure at all, especially within the thematics of your calling that are defined by the master numbers. And there's always going to be this really intriguing anxiety that people with master numbers have. It's this internal, I've got to do it. I've got to do what I'm here to do. What is it? I'm not doing it enough. I'm not doing it fast enough. I'm not that, all of those things. And so, for the 11-2, for instance, the 2 is the foundation, and the 2 is all about, it's the mediator, it's the diplomat, it's the lover, not the fighter, peacekeeper, very emotionally sensitive, wants those win-win. It's that very receptive, more feminine energy, to put it that way. And yet then you're integrating, you're asked to be both the yin and the yang. And so that you get the double 1, and the 1 and the 2 cannot get each other less, because right?
Yes, it's funny.
It's like there are two, I don't know, cousins on the teeter-totter trying to duke it out. And it's so the 1 is the number of me, it is the leader, it's the innovator, it's the creative confidence. It's all about new beginnings, action, everything that is initiating and in charge and assertive is the 1. And so you're asked to be double that. And yet also be this. So again, the power there is enormous, because it is literally, if you can visualize the yin yang, it really is that marriage of the perfect balance of that. And yet, boy, to be in human form and attempting to do that is another story, right? And so I call 11s, it's kind of, they're loving with an edge,
Ooh, that's good.
And so often that is, and often I'll find that 11-2s can decide, kind of, they're not going to go that direction, and they're kind of more opt into the more loving, diplomatic, supportive 2, or they're more into the double 1, and they have more trouble kind of softening, being more, people would see them as being pretty assertive, and so and yet also then, to even complicate matters, the 11 in numerology is called, the number of spiritual illumination.
Right.
It's really the wounded healer. It's got so much creative energy, usually very artistic, a natural healing agent, but it's a very etheric thing. So the 11-2 is more, many numerologists would say it's the dreamer rather than the doer. And so it has trouble grounding itself, right? And bringing things into fruition, and making that, bringing them into practical reality. So a lot of 11s can kind of be all out there, and yet and get frustrated because they can't bring it into the world. So again, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. And yet, if you're an 11-2 and you just feel like life is a cluster and you're so confused and conflicted about things, it's a wonderful thing to look at it and go. And so you can have a way of dealing with it. And I always say that we can't, we have to name something before we can do something about it. So that's what I feel the numbers provide.
And we chatted just a bit before that, so I did change my name. I got married and changed my name about 6.5 years ago. And so I asked you what your perspective is on when you do change your name. As Elton John or Reginald Dwight, we talked about how you do shine that a bit, but I still feel it fundamentally. And for me, when I did change my name and I shifted to having this 11-2 and 22-4 in my primary numbers, I really did. But you know what? It was interesting. There was so much change that happened around that time. I think around that time, I shifted from 11 to pinnacle or cycle into 22-4, right at the time that I did all of that. And I look different. My friend asked me the other day, okay, seriously, did you get like some kind of facial reconstruction? Because she looks at the old pictures of me, my face looks totally different. But I did do some other things, like I changed my diet and I got Invisalign and all kinds of things. And I also just turned 40, and you start to lose collagen. But thing upon thing upon thing happened all at this same shifting of the life cycle, shifting of my name. Weird things happen, but the numbers really reflect it. It's amazing to me.
It is amazing. And I even, not even though I do this particularly because I do it, I'm just always blown away by it. And me doing this as a practitioner, I'm a translator. I find it simply a language. And so it's absolutely so creepy in the way that it's accurate.
Yes.
I mean, you can work with people. I have no idea who they are. And I can tell them everything about their lives. And what you're talking about is the pinnacle cycles, which I have become much more fond of. They're these 4 chunks of time that we all go through at different times, depending on our life path number. That's how it's calculated. And yet I see these periods of time as they're like degree programs that we signed up for a more extended period of time. And they're also kind of like the building blocks that we can look at and to see how our life is going to be structured, how it's going to build, and how we can look at our experiences and really go, oh, that's why that was so hard. That's why this happened. And because this is what I was learning during that time. And I was given these opportunities to learn that. So, the beginning and the end of these cycles are the longest period of time. The first one is, can be anywhere from 28, 29 years, to 30, anyway, in your 30s. And then the end of life, depending on how long we live. And then there are 2 9-year cycles in the middle. And it really can get you really jazzed about gaining perspective around where you've been and where you are and where you're going.
And so I am in the 22-4 now, and we talked about the 11-2. So let's talk about the period I'm in and the master number of 22-4. I think it's really a beautiful. You're wooing for me.
Maybe. I am. I'm exhausted already just hearing about it.
What cycle are you in? Where are you? What pinnacle are you in?
I'm in an 8.
Oh, that's beautiful. Ooh, so that's fun.
It can be.
Yes, I know it can be
on any
challenging
given
as well.
day. I mean, and again, just like you were saying in the beginning, all the numbers are good, and all the numbers have their shining potentials. And all can be, more easy than others or more difficult. It kind of depends on how we work it, right?
Yeah.
And yet to go back to your 22-4 that you're going through, when I see that as a period of time, that is an exponential time for building something of lasting value that is going to have a spiritual component to it in a practical way. So it's one of these times that I would see that you would be drawn very much toward building something to help people on a grander scale live their lives in a better, more evolved way on a day-to-day basis. That can be this podcast you're doing. This could be, the work that you do with clients. It could be doing, getting a coaching program going where you're teaching people to teach, where you have a product, a service, anything of that nature can very much be in alignment with the 22-4. And yet it's not an overnight deal. Right. The 22-4 is about foundations, and it is in it for the long haul. So it's a time where you've got to really set up your structures, really think bigger, because the 4 is always going to kind of lure you into micromanaging and self-limiting, go, oh, I can't do that. So really to get people on your team to support something just a bit bigger and a bit, just to think a little bit outside of the box during this time, and to understand that also, as corny as it sounds, and I'm not being a self-help, meme or something here, when you are in a 22-4 cycle, you've got to schedule relaxation, like true breaks, true relaxation. Otherwise, you will burn out.
But I feel so guilty when I do that. But not the whole time, but I have to cross the bridge of feeling guilty about it. And I have to tell myself to stop, it shows up, ah, why aren't you doing, and but it's so true, because otherwise that life force energy is just going to not work for you. It's not going to be efficient. And that's for all of us. But, this, and what Felicia is talking about, if you're a 22-4 life path, or if you have it in any of your other major points, it's going to shine in that way for you. And look at the 4 is that teacher and that builder. And then the 2 is the love is the lover, right? That's crazy.
Yeah. And the 22-4 is hugely emotionally sensitive, usually a very intuitive and psychic person. And yet also the 4 is more of that literal, let's get it done. I've got my punch list. It's a day without results is a day without sunshine. I mean, you got to have it off the punch list. And yet the 2 can also be a little more emotionally volatile, right? And so it's really because the 2's biggest nemesis is really, let's put it this way, being too emotionally sensitive and relying too much on the emotions. And what the propensity is for the 2 is to kind of shape shift, to be the one who wants to be the pleaser and wants to love everybody, and wants this acknowledgement and these kudos. And yet they usually won't get it, because they're usually doing everything for everyone that no one wants them to do. So it's like, no one's asking you to do that. You're doing it from your heart, and and then you get really pissy when no one appreciates it. So
it's kind of like codependence. It sounds like that too can be codependent, really.
Yeah, it's a very codependent sort of energy. Again, the 2 in its optimal, to go back to like the 11-2, the common denominator there is that both the 1 and the 2 are learning about the self. Okay. And yet the 1 is learning how to exert the self, how to stand on their own 2 feet, be independent, be very quirky, creative, unique, pioneering. And the 2 is learning how to be themselves and emotionally in all situations, to not merge into others, to know who they are. And again, it sounds a little like, corny. It's hard for a lot of people to do that. And I know so many people who have a lot of trouble knowing who they are and being able to be that in all situations, right?
Yes.
And that is one of the biggest lessons of the 2, again, is to self-define and not let people walk all over you.
Yes, to become that healed empath rather than the sick empath who is like, I become everything, I sponge. That's not helpful. It's not helping anyone.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And the propensity for the 2 is to feel absolutely emotionally drained, just like they have been used as someone's psychic garbage pail for a long time. And so again, to bridge that into the 11-2, you've got all of that going on. And then the 22-4, you've got double those 2s, right?
Goodness. Yeah.
That are engaging with the 4, which is more like, hey, I know I've got an emotion, but I'm sitting it over here because there's work to be done.
Right.
So it's that interesting engagement between the 2.
Who is there a famous person who is as a life path 22-4 that you can think of? I can't think of
gosh, yes, the Dalai Lama.
Dalai Lama. Okay. There's one.
Yeah. Oh, there's one. There are lots of people who are, in this. And the interesting thing about the 22-4 is that, again, depending on how you add it up, right? If it can be often can be a 13-4 or a 22-4. Sometimes it's a 40. But people like Oprah Winfrey is a 4, Bill Gates is a 4, Brad Pitt is a 4, Jimmy Fallon, Tina Fey is a 22-4.
Oh, I love Tina Fey. But Oprah is a 4, right? And so I think that's really great to highlight too, because again, sometimes people, when they first hear about this, one of 2 things can happen. They think, oh, I'm just a 4, and so that means I'm not remarkable. You know what I mean? I'm not meant to be a spiritual leader or amazing at one thing or another. But Oprah's a 4, y'all. So it's a pretty great number. On the other hand, people can be like, well, I'm a 33-6. That means I can sit back because I'm just going to be amazing. And it's like, no, there's a lot of challenge there. We all have to do our work either way.
Absolutely, Trish. and I really want to highlight that, not in a negative way, as we've both talked about, and yet as a point of just a point of knowledge, which is I find that often those who even have a bit more success than people with master numbers are people who don't.
Right. Maybe there's just a little less. I don't want to say there is, but maybe there's a little less challenge. Maybe, and then so they can actually kind of hold that space for the others who are doing the challenges. I mean, we're all just one anyway.
Right. And, and to use the terminology, and I hope you understand my levity here, often people who don't have the master numbers are a little less psychotic. So, I say that lovingly because, again, people with these master numbers feel a little nutsy cuckoo sometimes, because they've got all this stuff going on. They feel this drive to achieve, but oftentimes part of their path is in the struggle and is having all of these experiences that will bring them into their helping, healing, calling of the master numbers. And the master numbers are also really testing everyone who has them to step into leadership and also to level the ego. And to become more altruistic overall. And so sometimes those lessons are a pretty swift kick in the pants that we get.
Definitely.
Right?
I feel like we're going to talk about 33-6, but I feel like the 9 should be an honorary master number because the 9 has got so much. It's like it's so robust, and it can see and feel and everything, and it has seen. It's almost like the Pisces, relative in astrology. And one thing I think is so beautiful about 9, one thing that it does, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but if you have 9 next to any other number, it reduces to the other number. And that is just so what the 9 does, right? 19 reduces to 1. Yeah. 993 reduces to 3. It's just, that's what 9 does, bless it. And 2 of my favorite people are Life Path 9, my wonderful friend Hokulani, and Prince. Prince was Life Path 9. Oh, gosh. I think he was a great example.
So many 9s are so fascinating. They are the quirky creatives. They, I don't know if you're a fan of Eddie Izzard. He is 9. And he's so fascinating to me because I just actually went to see his current show, Wunderbar, which was fantastic. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. And he's one of those people who is so highly charged with his 9 energy. And yet his big thing is that he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in religion. And he's like, my religion is humanity.
Yes, but that is God, as far as I'm concerned. So I was thinking that.
And yet what I'm pointing out is that people who have these callings work with it and they massage it and they struggle with it. And it's an issue, for them. And, Elvis Presley was a 9.
Oh, bless him.
And he was into numerology. I don't know. He was.
If you know. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah.
A lot of people, and again, no pressure for you 9s, but of course, Mother Teresa and Gandhi.
Right. No pressure. Just that.
And Adele. So there we go. It's all, it's, put them all in one room and see what happens. Oh my gosh.
Well, another thing I noticed, just so far as 9 is concerned, 2016 was a universal 9 year. And that is when everybody died. Like, it was like all of the famous people died in 2016. And it was the year when everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's December 23rd. Can anyone else die? And I think David Bowie slipped in there right before the year changed over. And I wonder, he did.
Oh, he did.
Yeah. And I was wondering, and I talked to a friend, I didn't go and look. I was wondering if those people like Carrie Fisher passed and I was wondering if these people had some significant 9s in their chart also, and that's how they kind of took the portal for that exit. But for us, it was basically like my childhood was passing on because it was so many people that were really powerful was that when Prince passed as well? I can't remember, but he's Life Path 9.
I can't remember. It was in that, it may have been, it was in that arena. I remember having to pull over.
I did that as well. Yes.
And I just bawled my eyes out when Prince died.
Yeah.
And also with David Bowie, those were shocks to me.
Yeah, he passed in
and
16. That's right. Kurt just looked it up for us. So yeah, yes, exactly. And Bowie and Carrie Fisher, those are the only ones I can remember off the top of my head. But that was a 9-year. Endings and conclusions, completions, and harvest, I think is a really beautiful way to look at that 9 too.
Yes, it's a grand transformation time.
Yeah.
Very much so. And yet again, if we look at it again, with no judgment, I mean, I'm a person who, I don't know, it won't be weird to you. I'm not afraid of dying.
Right.
I kind of look forward to, hanging out.
Yes.
And yet, every day, carpe diem, we've got to do it now. And some people, again, are done. And it's always fascinating that we still look at, as a culture, death as like a failure.
Right. Oh my goodness. And it makes no sense at all.
No.
Well, so I threw in there, like I said, what I consider an honorary master number, 9, but we still have to talk about 33-6.
Oh, 33s. Those are fewer.
I was going to say, you hardly see how come statistically, how is that possible? It seems like statistically it shouldn't be any different, but 11-2 seems to be the most common, right? And then somehow 22-4 and then 33-6. Does that make sense statistically?
It does. Well,
okay.
And what I love about this is that my share is that it is a cosmic joke that I am a numerologist because I hate math more than anything in the world. Like, it has been my most anxiety producing subject I'm not kidding. I'm so serious right now. Yeah. And so mathematically, I can't really give you the
oh, good, because I couldn't get it either. I hate it too.
And yet what I will say is that my basic understanding is, as we, when we do the math, if we're born in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, it shifts the availability.
That makes sense.
Of the numbers, right? So for instance, I've had clients who are younger who have a 44/8, which would be a master number. And yet it's just the kind of the beginning of the wave of that, that opportunity.
But this is so beautiful because we are nature. And so we collectively, globally move into different seasons. We move into different ages and we get what we need. And I think that's just so gorgeous. Wow. Or like the children the new children that we've been getting for now, 30 years or actually even longer if you consider the first wave, the indigo, the crystal, and the rainbow children. We're getting what we need. And so the availability of the numbers, that makes so much sense. Wow, that's really cool. I love it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then even if you look at the 1900s, we're a karmic 19.
Oh,
right.
Basically.
Yeah. And that was when we were learning all about, that was, capitalism and industrialization, all of those things that brought us into the me culture, right? All about individuality, all about being independent. That's when we were all living in single family houses with each one had a refrigerator and a washer and dryer. I mean, it's all the singular thing. And now we've moved into the 2000s, which is, again, if you think about it, Tricia, what
internet.
Is the thematic that we've had?
Information,
Love.
connection. The information age, connection started like at the very end of the 90s. But really, when we get into the 2000s is when we had the information age, which really started to, not even, we've been in the information age. I'd say we started to take over into that intuition age because of connecting non-locally, remotely, like the way that you and I are right now. The internet is really a model for telepathy and, spiritual connection because we don't need anything. We don't need to be in person. It's not about the devices of the physicality. It's about the heart and it's about the energy of it. So yeah, we ticked over into that too. Energy and the connection of it. Wow, that's cool. I love it. I just love numbers so much.
I love that. And what I love the most is that the way my perspective or the way I see it is, again, it's about the 2 and with the 3 zeros. So that's an amplification of that. And again, to me, it's about, we are in now an era of us? How do we figure out that we are all connected? And that is a thematic, right? And love, I mean, even in marketing, even, you go and I went to see a concert last night with my daughter, in which the performer is like, hey, it's all about love. It's love. It's love, 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 connection. And that sort of thing is really coming into play very, very distinctly. And I think it's part of this whole movement that we're in the 2000s.
Wow, that's so cool. It's like endless. And just look at also how we're going to be here for a while, because we go for 2000, whatever, it's going to be 100 years before we get to do something besides 2, because the 0 says, get back over there. There's nothing here for you. Get back to the 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of a fun thing. And what I love about it also, this information for me anyway, it can often quell some anxiety, because I think, it's one of those things, Tricia, I love keeping up with everyone as much as I can. And I was reading something about a therapist who is surprised that she specializes now in millennials, right? And she said, in the millennial, everyone's like, oh, they're entitled and they're this and they're that. And she's like, I don't find that at all. I find that they're very socially conscious, very hardworking, all of this. And their biggest concern when they come to me as a therapist is that they have too many choices.
Oh, yeah. No kidding.
And that they're afraid that they're going to make the wrong one, right? And so it's what I love about some of these tools that we have in the metaphysical world is that, again, when it's used for positive and not for the negative flow of it, it can really define things for you. So you can go, ooh, I thought I had 100 choices, and yet, if I look at this and these feel right to me, right? These are the ones that feel right. And so you can define yourself and just make yourself so much more effective and fulfilled, because you're aligning with your purpose rather than just following those, bright and shiny objects forever.
And and for the millennials, for all of us, but the millennials having had the context from the very beginning, there's so much bright and shiny. And that, again, sure, you can think of it as opportunity, but it can be overwhelming and difficult to focus then.
No, I agree. I just I think it's, again, we are in we're in an ascension. Try to say that 3 times fast. In an ascension cycle. If you look at any of these metaphysical tools, astrology, numerology, all kinds of other elements are pointing to that, right?
Right.
And even just astronomy, if you look at, they were measuring the
black hole,
the magnetic field when we have these eclipses and all of this, and it's just a fact that things change.
Well, speaking of changes, maybe we'll be getting some more 33/6s eventually, maybe toward the ends of our lives or the millennials' lives. So we have 33/6. What a beautiful number! To me, that 33 is just, I think it's very much the Christ consciousness number. 33 is not just to me. I think it is commonly considered the Christ consciousness number. And so, let's talk a little bit. We're going over time. I'm sorry, but we talk about 33/6. Can't leave everyone hanging.
Quick for you, 33/6s, and the 33/6 is just not for the weak at
not for the faint of heart.
Because the 6 again is the nurturer. It's all about love, duty, service. Home and family is really the solid center for that, and yet very, very visionary, very justice oriented, kind of the cosmic parent. And then you add the 33, which is the communicator, all about creative self-expression, optimism, joy, just emotional self-expression, very performative, very learning how to be expressed in an impeccable sort of way. And so when you put it together as this 33/6, it really is the ultimate it's the ultimate spiritual teacher, and also the person who really is here to put forward everything with unconditional love.
Oh, beautiful,
period.
Beautiful.
And then do that with fun.
Yes,
and with
because 3 is all
energy
about
and
fun.
with optimism. And yeah, the trouble with it is that, of course, with the 3s and the 6s, so emotionally attuned,
Yeah.
that, I mean, it's not easy, is it, Tricia, to go in our world and walk the world and be like, I'm not talking toxic positivity either, right?
Of course
like
not. Yeah.
everything's great. Just that the 6 is going to default into self-righteousness, often can be very controlling. It's one of their superpowers, and yet when it goes on the other edge, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And a perfectionist, those sorts of things. So add that with the emotions based of and attempting to be joyful and not depressed, right? Because one of the issues is that these people are going to feel things so intensely, and they're wanting to help, they're wanting to heal, and that's what they're here for. And yet it is an ongoing venture.
Yes.
And these people are often drawn to working with, kids or the elderly or people who are troubled, or those sorts of things. And it can be a heavy atmosphere. So often, a 33-6 really needs to understand that it is a lifelong endeavor that they're doing, and to attempt to be human within the process, and not to be very codependent, because they can be people who want to do everything for everybody, and then are kind of left in the dust, right? Without getting cared for themselves. So again, always going to be a delicate balance.
Heavy is the crown of the 33-6.
Yes, very much so.
And so we have as a beautiful shining example, Meryl Streep. Oh gosh, she's amazing, having the career that she's had, and she's a wonderful mother. I think she had 3 children or something. Somehow she had a pretty significant family while she was having this ubiquitous career, and she is amazing. I just love her so much, and shining that humanity, that joy in everything that she does, even in something as difficult as something like Sophie's Choice. That, oh my God, that film, if y'all haven't seen it, kind of don't, actually.
I started to say, get out your Kleenex box.
Yeah.
Because, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She's phenomenal. I am such a fan of hers on every level. And yet you can tell that she's a powerhouse. I mean, yes. I would think that, she's got her opinions. I remember years ago when organic was just, a word that no one knew. She was rallying for organic apples. Like, she was really on the forefront of understanding this connectivity that everything has, and she would step up and stand up and do that. And she is, to me, very much a shining example of the 33-6. We have others. I mean, Stephen King is a 33-6.
Wow.
Robert De Niro is a 33-6. And, so there are 33-6s out there, and they're doing their thing. And again, highly artistically creative often as well. And
I think Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro were in, I think, Deer Hunter together. So that must have been quite a set to be on.
Yes. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh.
And I saw you doing a video on 33-6 on your channel, which is awesome. I love it. So useful, so resourceful. Obviously, your books as well. And you were talking about the 33-6. You mentioned Meryl as the shining example, and you were talking about the shadow side of it. And you were saying, but, this, and this. And you started to list a description of what a shadow of 33-6 could be. And I was like, she's talking about Charlie Sheen. I know it. I went and looked it up. But it sounded exactly when he had his big, crisis a few years back now. Not to make fun of him, but it was, that's where the 33-6, the challenges are really getting to you with some of that.
And what I love to do, Tricia, is to look at that. And again, I love the way you say that we're not making fun. So let's look at that as an example. Lindsay Lohan is also a 33-6.
Oh, bless her. Yeah.
So let's look at that and go, there are these times where there's this instability and that vulnerability and kind of going off that cliff, and then how do you bring yourself back? Because I don't know a lot about what Charlie Sheen is doing now. I did pay attention several years ago that because I think, now I may be wrong, please look this up, fact check for me, didn't he have HIV or something because of
something like that? Yeah, I can't remember. It was something really severe like that.
something serious about that. So that, and then I noticed that he went on and he was actually becoming a spokesperson for a certain condom company, and attempting to educate people about that, and so in many ways he's turned over into, and what I like to say, even I don't like to say it, I will observe that most of the time our biggest spiritual pushes, or the way that we get the most growth in our lives, is when things are really down at the bottom, right? Yes. Those are the times when we figure out what we're made of. When we have a big health crisis, when something, when the divorce, when a death, when something really that we don't want, we don't want to deal with. But those are the things that are always going to be catalysts for us and our growth, no matter what. And so if you look at someone like him, someone like Lindsay Lohan, and they're working it, and I do like to say that often the master numbers really don't come into their full, bloom until late 40s, early 50s and beyond. And
so Lindsay's a little young in that still. So yeah. And what came to mind when you were talking about, the more difficult times is actually something Marianne Williamson said. And do you know off the top of your head what her life path number is? Because.
Oh gosh, no, okay. I don't.
Well, we could look it up, but I remember this is something very powerful. Marianne said that the mental and emotional difficulties are just the gravity that make us stronger. And we could put in there the life challenges too, even if it's a physical challenge. She says, a yoga, someone doing yoga or someone lifting weights or running, the thing that they're pushing against is what is building their muscles and making them more equipped, more fit, and stronger. And so that is the gravity, the difficulties, the suffering, the mental and emotional challenges, or the karmic numbers, or the shadow sides of the numbers. It's all just the gravity that is there to help us to grow.
Absolutely. And one of the metaphors I use, which is actually a true story, but it's a wonderful metaphor, is I was giving birth to my second child years ago, and it was such a different experience than my first one, and I was hyperventilating and all of this stuff. And the nurse practitioner said, Felicia, okay, where does it hurt the most? Mm-hmm. And she said, shut your eyes and tell me where, and I was like, oh, right here. And she said, okay, bring yourself down there energetically and just focus in where it hurts the most. And that's where you push.
Oh my goodness.
Push where it hurts the most, because that's that will allow you to give birth.
Oh, whew. Oh my goodness. I don't know if there's anything, there's any way to top that. That is so true. I found that. That is so true. And thinking about meditation and doing your interpersonal work, and when we want to escape the areas where there is the pain that's just existing within you, and I've had clients who want to avoid that. When we get in there and we feel that, we're like, no, I want to away from that. But the thing is, you're not injuring yourself. You're already at a state of injury. That's why you need to put the awareness there, because that will be releasing the injury, and that will be the healing. Or if that's where you'll push, and then you'll give birth. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna be using that, and I will accredit you.
Just use it. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we are way over time. But is there any last thing you want to say? I want to encourage everyone to go buy Felicia's books, go to all of her media, her website. Are you doing one-on-one sessions at this time still?
I am. I'm doing one-on-one sessions. I've got a webinar series. If you're just curious and want to do some webinars to familiarize yourself with numerology, got that going on. So just take a look and see what speaks to you.
I think it's really powerful to do the one-on-ones with a really powerful practitioner who's also intuitive, and then that's a way to kickstart your understanding, because this is a personal tool, but then also get periodic ones. I think it's really great. But with the webinar is really helpful, because she's going to be able to equip you, as well as her books will help you to equip yourself. I mean, you can do so much with it. You can look at your personal year, you can look at your month, you can look at the day and see the energies that you are enhancing at the time. And I just am so grateful for your work again, I have to say, and thank you for coming on the program. You're amazing.
Thank you. This has just been a pleasure. I love, yes, we have coffee and tea and chat some more. So
Yes, I don't want to keep you any longer, but I could, man. I could just make Kurt stay here for another 2 hours and talk to you.
Kurt, hi. We won't do that to you, Kurt.
I wouldn't mind. This is actually really interesting stuff.
It's really interesting, and he's Life Path 3, so he wanted to hear a bunch of that. So I'm glad we started that way. Well, again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Felicia Bender, for all the work that you do, for being on the program. And I hope to maybe you can come on again. We can talk about some stuff that's going on in the world at the time. That could be really fun if you're ever available. I know how busy you are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
And thank you, everyone. We will see you again next time. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.